How long are radio commercials? Well, it depends. As a business, probably not long enough, and as a listener, probably way too stinking long. But we're going to get into the actual length here in just a little bit and how you can parlay that into your advantage as well. So keep watching. Now, this is important because when you get to the end of this video, you're going to understand, well, first of all, the basic lengths of any radio commercial. That'll be easy. But then I'm going to show you a couple things that you can do to kind of leverage that to your advantage. There are some times when a longer commercial is better than a shorter commercial or vice versa, but ultimately, how can you possibly, finagle your way into a particular situation to really save you a lot of money? So let's get started. Well, the simple answer to the question, how long are radio ads? The simple answer is, most likely you're going to see either a 30 or a 60-second ad. Typically, that's where they fall. It all depends on this radio station, what they're offering, and how they bill it. There are different ways that they can actually bill it, not just 30 versus 60, where let's say it would be $50 and maybe $80 respectively, but they could also charge by the unit. And it depends on if they look at 1 unit or 2 units. Sometimes they'll call a 30 1 unit and a 60 2 units, or vice versa. They'll call a 60 1 unit and a 30 will be a half unit. But that breaks down to how long the stop set is going to be and how many times that they'll have commercials in the stop set. Now, here's the crazy thing. You can have a whole bunch of 30-second commercials in a row. Let's say you have 5 30-second commercials in a row. And then at another stop set, your audience hears, say, 3 or 4 60s. Whereas the 5 30s are shorter, they will feel like more, and people will say it was a longer break than the 3 30s, even though it was only 2.5 minutes versus 3 minutes. Why? Because the tone changed, the commercial changed, the music changed. Whatever it was, it changed 5 times. 5 times instead of 3 times. And that's how most people perceive radio commercials. So how do you parlay some of this to your advantage? How do you use this to get your radio commercial A, more noticeable, and B, possibly even cut through all the clutter? That's the biggest thing, is you're cutting through all the clutter and trying to deliver your message. Well, I remember way back when, 30 years ago, when I first started writing and producing radio commercials, I actually started off as a radio personality. And as a personality, as a jock, as a DJ, whatever you want to call them, it was probably your job at the radio station to at least read the radio commercials and maybe even produce the radio commercials. Add music, maybe some sound effects, something like that. So you had the final commercial ready to go, and then upload it to the station where it's going to play. And then our stations were actually, this company owned like 10 radio stations and 190 newspapers. So they were more of a newspaper company than a radio company. And so they went ahead and divested themselves of the radio assets, and a real honest-to-God radio company bought them, rearranged a few people, got some people in some jobs and some seats that were never filled, and that's when I became the creative services director. They wanted to know who was the most organized and who was the most creative and who was not in that meeting. Well, that was all me, okay? I was not in that particular meeting, and so they made me the creative services director. That was when I found out that I had to learn how to write commercials. And I remember when I was first writing commercials, it was like pulling teeth to write a 30-second ad. Oh my gosh, it just took so long to write a 30-second ad. And then along comes one of the salespeople and they say, we need a 60 for this. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's like a novel. How do you write? I can't write a novel. I don't know how to write an ad that long. Well, once I discovered copywriting and the right way to do it, the right way to write a radio commercial, now it's to the point where a 60 isn't enough. Please don't give me a 30. That's not, I don't even have time to like introduce you and the product and the call to action, let alone try to make an effective ad. Give me a 60 any day of the week. I would much rather have a 60. So how are you going to make that your story? There are certain situations that do call for a 30 and there's no way you can get around that. And then there are other times when you can bump it up to a 60. If there's any way that you can possibly get a 60 for your ad, please do. It would certainly make more sense, especially when it comes to the actual sales message, which I've covered in other videos. But yeah, trying to make that connection with your listener, and then trying to make that emotional connection with your listener, and then tie in your product or service, you'd be doing yourself a disservice trying to get it into a 30. Sometimes you can't help it. For example, say a sports package. If you're going to be a local basketball sponsor or a sports or a NASCAR sponsor or something like that, you're probably better off, and they may only take 30s. So you've got to have a 30-second message ready to go. But maybe if you're doing something 6A to 7P, maybe a 24-hour thing, run a schedule kind of thing, drop my commercial in wherever there's an availability, you might be able to do the 60, which I would highly, highly recommend. Now, if this is something that you find very valuable, please click the like button. But we also cover, say, your YouTube channel and your podcast, your company podcast, and your blogging. This is what we do here. So if that's something that you're looking forward to for your business, be sure to subscribe to the channel and don't miss a single episode when we go over all of it. Podcasting to cameras, to lighting, to microphones, you name it, we'll cover it here and get you up and running quickly, efficiently, and inexpensively. Now, there are some other different lengths of commercials that you may encounter, but this all depends on the situation at the station, what they specifically offer, and how they structure some things. Maybe you'll just get a mention. There are times when just a mention at, like, say, the sports or weather or a traffic report, you might just get a mention. The weather brought to you by the name of your business. Period. That's it. No sales pitch, no call to action, no nothing, just the name of the business. Okay, fine. Sometimes you'll get a 10-second. Typically, we like to call those billboards. Maybe that's a 10-second billboard. In the same situation, it would be, the weather today is brought to you by so-and-so Mitsubishi, where driving is a pleasure. Be sure and stop by and see the brand new models on the lot today. So you get a little bit more of that, kind of enough room for a tag, maybe a slight sales pitch, maybe a motto or a slogan or something like that, but you're still not going to get a lot. It is a sponsorship mention, and people all of a sudden start to tune in, so that's a great place to go ahead and get your message, to slip it in there, to at least get the name of your company in there so people hear it one more time. They're just now starting to tune in when they hear the weather, when they hear the sports, when they hear especially the traffic. All of those things really start to capture people's attention. Now's a great time to slip you in there. You might even have an opportunity for a 15-second mention. Again, probably plays in the same situation as the 10-second. They just give you 5 more seconds. Maybe they've got a special position for that, for something that is specifically sold with a 15. Or maybe it's a 30-second, but you get a 15 mention at the front and a 15 mention at the end. Can you say 60? So that's kind of how that one falls. Sometimes they'll structure it that way. It all depends on the situation and how the station is selling it. If you're in a weather, like I mentioned earlier, a weather or a traffic sponsor, maybe even a sports sponsor. Sports sponsors will get a lot of mentions throughout the game, the race, the tournament, whatever it is. Plus, you'll get your own commercial throughout the entire coverage. You'll get, say, a 30-second all to yourself or something like that. They will come in banks of commercials. You might have a single one by itself, say, at the top of the hour, but typically you'll have 2 or 3 together in a little cluster at any given time. And on a rare occasion, you might be able to score a 1.5 to 2-minute ad. Those were getting a little bit popular back in the 90s, and then I think people kind of caught on to it. Remember when I was talking about units earlier, and that 5 30-second ads felt longer than 3 60-second ads? Well, what they started to do then was kind of capitalize on that, charge a little bit more. Radio stations charged a little bit more, but they let you run a 1.5 to 2 minutes. Well, those are the ones that people started catching on to and saying, you know what, that's a really stinking long commercial. And they would tune out. And when people tune out, you're totally shooting yourself in the foot as a radio station, and people are not hearing the ads and they're not hearing your programming. So they started getting away from that and then going back to the 30s and the 60s and the mentions. And if they were doing 10s or 15s, whatever they would do for those particular packages. But the big ones kind of disappeared. Every once in a while, you might find someone who will do that, maybe in the overnight hours, like midnight to 6 a.m. That's the least amount of listeners. I'm not saying there are no listeners. There are a lot of third shift people out there who got earbuds on and they're listening and getting through their workday. So if you're getting started, the most common lengths are going to be 30s and 60s, and you might find some 10s and 15s. Now, to help you with your next radio ad, I have a free gift for you. It is my radio commercial checklist. There's a link in the description down below. Click on it and get your free copy immediately. It will walk you through the commercial writing process to make sure that your message stays focused and that you cut through the clutter and that you don't sound like all the other commercials that are on the radio, and hopefully see a little bit better results in your cash register. So click the link down below and get your free copy right now. I'm Nick Natarella with AdWise Creative. Thank you for watching.